Time travel is a tricky thing. This is a Patreon sponsored review, and it's of something that I'd never heard of, and I don't know how many of you will have. We'll find out. I was commissioned to take a look at the first, well, technically just the pilot episode, but it's a double-length episode. So effectively the first two episodes of a series from 1998 called 7 Days. I'd never heard of this thing. Apparently it lasted 3 seasons. But I knew nothing about it. It's really interesting. There's just a lot of thought that went into it, and a lot of small touches I really appreciated. It is still wrapped in an overall very mid-late 90s presentation and attitude, which I'm not going to say is bad, but like, it was weird seeing like way more thought put into this than I would have expected based off its very dated 90s veneer. But what is this thing? So this is, as I alluded to, it's a time travel story, but it's complicated. So there is this secret government program that has developed time travel, but it's incredibly limited. It apparently they scrounged technology from the crash ship from Roswell, New Mexico in Area 51, and they've cobbled it together just well enough that they can send one person back in time 7 days. Now, that's a fixed amount, and it's just the more I think about it, it's really well thought out in terms of its premise, because we actually open with what? We open a little bit with our lead character, Parker, I think is his name. As great as the premise is, the characters are fine. That's kind of it, though. Nobody's really especially memorable in terms of their characterization. Everything that I'm like, that's really good, has to do with the premise. So if I got that name wrong, forgive me, and I cannot remember literally any other character's name in the entire thing. But anyways, we do start with him, and we start with this... Boy, you can tell this was done before 9/11. We start with introducing Parker, who was in the military, currently in a psychiatric facility, basically because of the extreme trauma that he endured after being captured and held and tortured for information. And it does the thing where like, yeah, maybe he's a little crazy, and maybe even the American military screwed him over, but he believes in duty and doing the right thing. Again, feels very 90s. Not that he's badly played, like he's fine for what he is. But anyway, we get introduced to him, and at the same time, we see this terrorist attack taking place. The main... I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's just... this thing went off the air in May of 2001, and... just, oh boy. The main feature of the terrorist attack is crashing a plane into the White House. Now, it's not a commercial passenger plane. It's like a puddle jumper loaded with explosives. But yeah, they crash a plane into the White House, which kills the president, the vice president, also the president of Russia, who was there for talks. And in addition to that, they hit the motorcade that's carrying the Speaker of the House with a missile launcher, so he's gone too. And also, there's like a toxin that was on the plane, so like within a however big radius, everyone's basically been poisoned and is dying. I think they might possibly sort of overegg the pudding a little bit with how much they had to do. But basically, there's this massive disaster. For the record, the terrorists in this, again, very late 90s, they're basically Russians who either believe that their actions will in some way help restore Russia to being the USSR again, or they just want revenge on America. For that, it's basically the same core motivation that drove, say, the villains in Air Force One, which came out around the same time. Fittingly enough, I can talk. Anyways, so this massive problem, and this spurs them on to actually activate this, I think it's called the backstep program, to send someone back 7 days, because the scientists are saying, like, we're not ready. Like, we've got some very preliminary tests. There's a ton we need to do. But basically, they've been told, look, we have the option to at least try and do this to undo what just happened. And we're going to do that. And ultimately, yes, Parker, the guy who we meet who's in the mental hospital, is going to be the one chosen to do it. But kind of in an early indication of there being more thought put into this than I would have expected. It's not just the generic, like, you're the best and we need you, and like, Rambo 2 or 3 kind of thing. Whatever one where he's like in a monastery and they're like, we need you, Rambo. Like, it's not that. He's actually one of a pool of candidates, and he's specifically being considered because of 2 things. One, he basically has a photographic memory, so they can load him up with all the information that is needed to help try and prevent this, and he will remember it. And then 2, he has they call it a high pain threshold. I would say it's much more a case of can focus through pain very well. So it's not just a high tolerance, can keep his focus as he is suffering through pain. And that ends up being key to this, because one of the things they haven't really figured out how to do automatically, and part of the reason the thing needs a pilot, is because this might actually be why the person commissions me. I'm not sure. So, okay, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but just stick with me. A couple of years ago, I did a TikTok where I pointed out that something that basically no time travel story deals with is the fact that if something travels backwards or forwards in time, it has to also be able to teleport. Because if it can't, it wouldn't work. Now, there are some things like the TARDIS where that's built in and that's fine. But if you think about your standard time travel story, you go back however far in time and you arrive at the exact same point on the planet at a different point in time. Except in reality, if you are in a fixed point and you go back so far in time, the planet's not even going to be in the same position in space. It's going to be at a different point in its orbit around the sun. The entire solar system will have drifted slightly. Like, you can't actually do that unless you are also physically moving, because if you just jump back in time and stay in the same place, the Earth's not there anymore, dude. And this actually addresses that. This is the only thing I can think of that addresses it outright. But it's really cool, and that's why he needs to be able to focus, because this thing's going to be, shaking and shuddering and possibly causing him pain. But he needs to like manually keep this thing aligned properly and get it properly set up so that it does land more or less where it set off from. Otherwise, as they have done with some tests, he will either end up in space or buried in the core of the Earth. I'm like, oh my God, somebody freaking addressed that. That was really cool. And there's actually a really neat sort of tension at the fact that going back it's 7 days. It's not like, oh, we can send you back a little sooner. No, it's 7 days. That's what you've got. And there's an inherent tension in that, particularly with this scenario where they're pulling the trigger on this, because if they wait a little longer, because like the 7 days, that's a moving target. And at a certain point, like if they wait too long, they'll have bypass and then they can't send him back far enough to actually prevent it. But if they wait a little longer, he'll have less time to prevent it, but they might have gathered more information about the people who did this. So he'll have more info with which to stop it, but he'll have less time to do it. Or they can send him back like now, more or less, and not wait for more information to come in, which it might not. But if they send him back now, he'll have more time to try and prevent it, but he'll be working with less information. Like, just all these things sort of in the mix and being considered as part of it. I legitimately would love to see this remade now, possibly in like a serialized format, like a serialized season. This is really well thought out in a lot of ways. But then there's also a handful of things that, again, just kind of feel very 90s, or like you didn't necessarily need to do that. So like there's one guy who's on the project who's just the designated asshole. And he's the one who's like, I don't trust him. He's not a patriot. Like this guy, like he's belligerent. He's racist. He's hopped up on some kind of medication. They don't really make it clear what it is, but Like, he's such a clear problem, and he's uninteresting as a result for that. Now, there is potentially an interesting thing. This doesn't have the time to do it in this pilot. There's potentially an interesting thing, which is that he actually becomes such a problem. He tries to disrupt the launch, and they have to shoot him to stop him. So when our hero goes back in time and sees this guy before he's fully cracked, what do? Do you try and ingratiate yourself to the guy who is going to lose it? Do you try and talk him out of it? Is he going to listen to you anyway? And there's like a little tiny hint of that. Maybe that's a thing in later on in the season. I don't know. But if it's not, the character was kind of dull. They also give our hero this personal motivation because it turns out that in the radius of areas that got poisoned from the plane was the school that his son went at. So now he's not only saving the president, he has to now also try and save his son. And I'm like, I don't think that was necessary. I don't think that added anything to it, really. It did add a very just kind of cringy scene of this kid's mother going to his Easter school pageant, which is like the worst Easter costume in existence. It's just this kind of cut out poster board rabbit thing with like a hole in the face for him to stick his face through. And like other kids are on stage and they're kind of holding it up so it's even his just hanging off him. It's like, what is going on? It's so weird. But those are the kind of touches that they don't really hurt. Honestly, they also don't really help. They don't add anything. And I don't think that they were necessary. But to give you some more examples of like how much thought was clearly put into this, there's a bit where once he's arrived and he's waiting to be picked up by this project because they already have it figured out how it is that he's going to get in touch with them so that they can start working on foiling this thing, because they give him a tattoo of a barcode that they will know and they will scan when he shows up there. And they also like put something like under his skin as a double check on that. But like he has a phone number to call and a certain thing to say, and they come and get him and scan the stuff and like, cool. Like, we didn't think we'd have somebody showing up for this soon because we aren't planning on doing this because, like, stuff hasn't happened. And like I said, they had to activate the whole thing earlier than they planned. But they're like, we know he was sent back on this project. This man's word is gospel. Believe what he says. And we listen to it. So there's no point of it where he's like, he has to convince everybody. It's like, you need to listen to me. It's like, no, we're skipping all that. They thought of it. They thought of how much time would be lost if he had to convince them who he was and what he knew. So they just know. They just know they can listen to him and know that they can trust him right off the bat. But while he's waiting to be picked up after he's called them, he goes to a casino and places money on, I think it was a basketball game. And this was a nice touch coming off of a touch I was kind of mixed on. So I know I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. This is just kind of really fun to talk through. So before he jumped back in time, this woman who was one of the higher ups on the project, she was getting kind of flirty with her in a way that I was admittedly rolling my eyes at. She did have a certain amount of self-awareness that I did appreciate, because at one point he's leaning on her and is like, you understand the effect you have on guys, and like, you understand what you're doing to me, right? And she's like, yeah, I know. So like, there's a certain amount of self-awareness that helps a little. Still don't super love it. But, and here's why I'm tying this in with the betting on the basketball game thing. When he goes back in time, he's like, we kind of maybe started to have a thing going on. And he's jumped back 7 days timeline, she's like, look, maybe so, but dude, stop. Things are not going to be the same. And he's like, why not? It was like, well, there are going to be changes to the timeline beyond just what you deliberately go out of your way to change to try and like prevent this thing we're trying to stop. There will be a ton of knock-on butterfly effect things that happen as well, because you're not supposed to be here. When you landed here, your very presence displaced a bunch of air, a bunch of dust, a bunch of energy, and suddenly the world is reshaped simply by you being there when you weren't there before. And that'll have a ton of knock-on effects, tiny things most likely, that we can't necessarily track. And right now I'm not feeling anything for you, dude. That might be one of those things. And that's when he looks into the basketball game, and the team that he knew won now didn't. They lost just barely because that ended up being one of those little butterfly effect things. And again, just really well thought through because, yeah, somebody would try and use that to win at sports betting or whatever, you know, Back to the Future Part 2 and whatnot. But they've kind of accounted for like, yeah, that's probably not going to work. Oh, and there's this other character who I really liked who's on the team. They have this scientist who's in a wheelchair. And what's really cool because the time machine is basically just this big ball that they stick him in, and it's quite big. But they've obviously been accommodating for this scientist for his mobility needs. Because, yeah, he gets around in a wheelchair. But then they have, like, this harness and strap system that, like, lifts him up. And it's like a crane arm moving him around. And he's got, like, a little remote to move himself to different places to check things out. So they've got Parker, like, looking at this thing going, wow, this is really something. And, like, the other people are, like, up on a gantry and, like, talking to him. This other guy just kind of breezes by, like, yeah, we're pretty sure it'll work. It was great. It was so casual. It's like, yeah, this is how I get around this space. What? Again, just a lot of really small touches. It is interesting to me that it was made of like a episodic series. I'm not sure I have a ton of interest in watching that because like all my interest is in the core premise and how much thought went into that. Like the week to week stories of what's the disaster that he's going to try and prevent now and what's he got to do to prevent it. I'm not sure that would hold my attention for very long, but dang, man, as a premise, this is really cool and really well thought out. Like, I don't feel a super large need to watch any more of this thing, but boy, am I glad I watched the pilot. This was really neat. Yeah. 7 days. Anybody see this at the time? Hear about it? Know anything about it? Anybody? Anything? Whatever your thoughts might be. Drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. I feel like I've been let into like some super secret knowledge just even knowing this thing ever existed. But Patreon was how I was commissioned to review this. And you can commission me to review stuff. You can also support me at lower levels of support and still get various perks such as ad-free viewing of my main channel videos and seeing the docket at the start of every month, etc., etc., etc. But whatever your thoughts are, I did that. That's the comment thing. But don't worry too much about it though. Like, share, subscribe also help. But we just take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twilord, Tracy Scrabbit, Pau Barabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and to thank some folks from the lower tiers: Cyborg Ex Machina, Alex, and Lightning Spirit. I've been saying Angry Casperol for ages, and I almost said Angie Casperol. You are distracting, the whole lot of you.